Throughout European history, patience has always been considered an important virtue, a foundation that helps individuals achieve success and maturity in thought. From ancient Greece, philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle emphasized the importance of self-control, patience, and emotional mastery. Socrates once said, "Be patient, for all difficult things take time to come to fruition." This idea continued to be developed in Christian tradition. The Bible writes, "A person who is slow to anger has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly." Saints like Augustine and Thomas Aquinas also viewed patience as a sign of wisdom and faith. During the Middle Ages, knights in the Crusades not only trained for physical strength, but also learned to practice patience and humility to maintain honor and loyalty. During the Renaissance, Erasmus, one of the great humanists, stressed that nothing reflects wisdom more than patience. He believed that people could reach greatness by controlling themselves, accepting difficulties, and not rushing into actions. Shakespeare also wrote in Othello, "Patience is the greatest victory." Even during the Enlightenment, Voltaire reminded us, "Water wears away stone. Patience always wins." In the Industrial Revolution, scientists like Newton and Darwin demonstrated that patience and persistence in research were key to groundbreaking discoveries. In modern life, patience remains an important quality that helps people face pressures and challenges. As a European proverb reminds us, Rome wasn't built in a day. Successful people are not those who rush, but those who understand that all achievements require time and perseverance. Taking a step back is not losing. It's a way to move forward. By holding on to patience, individuals can conquer themselves and reach new heights in life. In family life, if one person knows how to be patient, husband and wife will live harmoniously. In neighborhoods, if a family is willing to compromise, neighbors will live in peace. Among friends, minor disagreements may arise, but as long as both sides are understanding, conflicts won't turn into rifts. The Europeans used to say, "Patience is not giving in, but conquering one's own ego." The story of Isaac Newton is a clear example of this. One of the greatest minds in history, Newton once had a conflict with astronomer John Flamsteed. When researching planetary motion, Newton needed data from Flamsteed, but he refused to provide it. If Newton had acted rashly and confronted Flamsteed, he could have harmed his reputation. Instead, he remained patient, continued his research with what he had, and ultimately completed Philosophia Naturalis Principia Mathematica, the work that laid the foundation for modern physics. Patience is not only important in science, but also in politics. In the 19th century, Victor Hugo, one of France's greatest writers, was exiled by the government for his ideas. If he had responded with violence or succumbed to bitterness, his ideas might have been buried. But instead of confronting directly, he quietly wrote, patiently conveying his message through every page. Les Miserables, the work he wrote during his exile, shook French society, awakened the conscience of millions, and became an immortal masterpiece. Thanks to his patience, he not only triumphed over his adversaries but also triumphed over time. Patience does not mean weakness. Sometimes it is the strategy of great people. Napoleon Bonaparte, when he was a young officer, was often overlooked by his superiors and assigned menial tasks. He could have been angry, he could have rebelled, but he chose to be patient. Instead of arguing, he proved his worth through each battle and wise decision. Patience helped him rise from an unknown to a great emperor, changing the entire landscape of Europe. History has shown that those with a far-sighted vision don't let small matters prevent them from seizing bigger opportunities. Patience is not about giving up, but a way of gathering strength, waiting for the right moment. It is those who can endure challenges, set aside their egos, and look beyond the present who truly make history. In Western history, great individuals are remembered not only for their talents or strength, but also for their ability to endure and control themselves in the face of adversity. Like a blade close to the heart, Patience is not weakness, but an art of restraint, a smoldering fire that shapes one's will. If you cannot endure small matters, your grand plans will surely fail. By observing how far a person can endure, we can measure the greatness of their ambitions. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king of Rome, understood the value of patience better than anyone. As the ruler of a vast empire, he faced wars, plagues, rebellions, and constant slander. One traitor stood before him, loudly accusing him with harsh words. The courtiers were furious, swords drawn, but Marcus merely smiled and said, "If what he says is true, I will correct myself. If it's false, there's nothing worth worrying about." The entire court was stunned. It wasn't that he didn't feel anger, but he understood that anger is the weapon of the weak. The patience of the wise is not about unconditional submission, but a strategy to shape events. Napoleon Bonaparte endured years of humiliation and imprisonment on a desolate island. He didn't resent, nor did he wallow in despair. He waited. When the moment came, he returned, sweeping across Europe like a storm. If Napoleon had allowed anger to take control, history would not have known a French emperor. Similarly, Nelson Mandela endured 27 years in prison, subjected to insults and torture, yet he did not harbor hatred. Upon his release, he did not seek revenge, but chose the path of reconciliation. He understood that true strength lies not in responding with violence, but in turning enemies into allies and hatred into power. Patience is not about passive endurance. It is a quiet fire that burns away the small self to forge a greater will. When others falsely accuse you or insult you, responding is like throwing more fuel on the fire. But if you remain silent, steadfast as a rock in a stream, your adversaries will eventually recognize their own insignificance. The truly wise understand that while we cannot control the world around us, we can control ourselves. As the old saying goes, when a storm rises, the weak seek shelter, but the strong learn to command the wind. And to do this, they first learn patience. At its core, patience is not just about enduring. It is the ability to remain fully aware during challenging moments. When facing hardship, it's not about overcoming, but about understanding that each moment is a part of a long journey, one measured not by speed, but by the stillness of the soul. It is in those moments when emotions surge, when one wants to explode, when exhaustion nearly tears apart one's resilience, that only those who remain calm can achieve true greatness. Patience is not about waiting. It's the ability to exist through the storm without being swept away. There is an ancient Greek saying, "Great people are not those who never stumble, but those who never give up." In every great culture, patience has always been a part of success, an essential virtue for creators, leaders, and warriors. It's not just significant in battles or grand campaigns, but in every moment of life, where each decision and action can change the course of everything. Napoleon Bonaparte, in his early military career, learned this lesson deeply when he had to wait in a high-ranking officer's office. Surrounded by his peers, he witnessed their impatience. Some could not sit still, glancing at the clock as if their time was more valuable than anyone else's. Others, frustrated by the delay, began to gossip to ease their discomfort. But Napoleon, being a strategist and a man of vision, sat quietly, as still as a rock, without a hint of impatience. When the general entered, without a word of explanation, he simply looked at the others and made his decision. Those who cannot wait cannot lead. This seemingly ordinary event brings a profound lesson in leadership. Patience is not just about endurance. It's the ability to wait for the right moment, to understand time, and to understand oneself. A patient person is never in a hurry because they know that every decision and step requires careful preparation and a broad vision. Winston Churchill, during his leadership of Britain through the World Wars, demonstrated that nothing is more important than calmness in the most perilous moments. He faced countless challenges, from German attacks to the declining morale of his people, But in all those moments, what Churchill needed wasn't military power or support from allies, but patience and the ability to maintain the nation's morale. He once said, "We shall never surrender. We can only persevere to the end." This principle isn't just true in war. In everyday life, from casual encounters to major career decisions, patience is the key that opens all doors. A person can refine themselves through failure, learn from difficulties, and never give up on their goals. As the old saying goes, slow but steady wins the race. In that long, endless journey, only those who persist and remain patient will achieve what others can only dream of. Therefore, patience is not only a virtue, but an art of living. It's the ability to maintain composure in any situation, to accept life's challenges without being defeated, and to understand that not everything comes immediately, but it will come when the right time arrives. Patience is not weakness, but the strongest force in a constantly changing world. In European history, many figures exemplify patience, a trait not only of psychological strength, but also the key to greatness and longevity. One of the most iconic figures is Charlemagne, also known as Charles the Great, the king of the Carolingian Empire. Famous for his military achievements and for founding a great empire in the West, it was his patience and long-term vision that ensured the enduring greatness of his empire, which profoundly impacted European civilization for centuries. Charlemagne inherited a fragmented empire, divided by tribes and internal conflicts. Instead of rushing for quick victories, he chose the difficult and long road of uniting these lands. One of his biggest challenges was dealing with the Saxon rebellions. Rather than immediately resorting to force, he patiently adopted a strategy of reconciliation, accepting cultural differences and attempting to persuade them to integrate into his system of governance. This wasn't just a military strategy, but a lesson in how to deal with people and cultural conflicts. His wars, though bloody and harsh, were carefully planned and strategic. He wasn't just a brilliant military commander, but also a leader who knew how to wait for the right moment, patiently building strong relationships with tribes, the church, and even his enemies. Charlemagne understood that power doesn't always come from force, but sometimes from perseverance, persuasion, and building long-term trust. Through patience, he not only conquered but also built a civilization, laying the foundation for the development of Europe during the Middle Ages. Another example of patience in European history is Queen Elizabeth I. Despite facing external threats and strong internal opposition, Elizabeth II never rushed in her decisions. She knew that the stability of her kingdom couldn't be built on immediate victories, but required careful consideration and patience in handling complex political relationships, especially in the context of war and rebellion. Under her reign, England experienced a period of prosperity and long-lasting cultural and political development. Both Charlemagne and Elizabeth II understood that patience is not weakness, but the latent strength needed to build and maintain lasting power. Patience requires a deep understanding of people, circumstances, and timing. It was through enduring trials and overcoming difficulties that they were able to sustain power and build magnificent empires, shaping the course of history. For these leaders, patience was not just a personal virtue, but a power strategy. In a constantly changing world, where haste and quick decisions often lead to failure, patience becomes the determining factor for long-term survival and success. It's a profound lesson in how seemingly simple virtues can guide people through immense challenges, leaving a lasting impact on the history of humanity. In European history, great leaders are admired not only for their military talent or power, but also for their deep qualities, the ability to endure in the most challenging moments. Figures like Napoleon Bonaparte, Charlemagne, and Richard the Lionheart became legends not just for their military prowess, but for their inner strength, their ability to endure hardships, and their unwavering persistence in dark times. Napoleon Bonaparte, whose influence is vast in world history, was not only a brilliant strategist but also a symbol of persistence and patience. After every defeat, From the Russian campaign of 1812 to the loss at Waterloo, Napoleon never stopped reinventing himself, seeking opportunities to return, knowing that the wounds in his heart might never heal. His resilience was shown not just through his victories, but in how he faced loneliness and failure. Napoleon was a testament to the brutality of war, but also a lesson in bravery, not in battle, but in enduring and continuing the fight, even when everything seemed lost. Charlemagne, who founded the Carolingian Empire, unified most of Europe by the late 8th century. His journey wasn't just a series of glorious victories. Instead, it was a story of patience in building a strong empire from a fragmented and chaotic foundation. Charlemagne, with sharp intellect and determination, worked tirelessly to maintain stability in a world full of conflict and instability. Perhaps what made him a legendary king wasn't just his battlefield victories, but his ability to maintain a powerful empire for centuries, thanks to his skillful balance between war and peace, discipline and compassion. Charlemagne's patience was not only reflected in political decisions, but also in how he faced the challenges of maintaining an empire where many others had failed to build. Richard the Lionheart, known for his courage as a warrior, fought many great battles, but also faced moments of inner conflict and doubt. While fighting in the Crusades, he not only confronted enemies beyond the borders, but also wrestled with personal struggles. The tough decisions he made were not only to protect his kingdom, but to uphold his respect for himself and the principles he believed in. Richard was not an easy man. He had moments of self-doubt, even weakness. But it was during these times that he showed patience in maintaining his image as a leader who was both strong and empathetic toward the sufferings of war. Europe has seen many kings and generals, but figures like Napoleon, Charlemagne, and Richard the Lionheart were not just great warriors. They were individuals with extraordinary inner strength. Patience and endurance are not easily acquired qualities, but they prove that in life and war, success is not always determined by physical power or military skill. Sometimes, it's the ability to keep your spirit intact during the darkest moments. It is this patience, the ability to endure pain and failure, that makes such figures immortal in history. William Cecil was one of the most loyal and trusted advisors to Queen Elizabeth IV. He was the architect of many crucial policies that helped solidify the Tudor dynasty and protect England from external threats. As a brilliant strategist, he always put the interests of the kingdom above personal gain, maintaining a cautious attitude and rarely speaking unless directly asked by the Queen. For many years, Cecil kept a distance from the power struggles in the court, avoiding entanglement in political disputes. His children did not marry into ambitious families, thus avoiding dangerous political alliances. Despite being respected by both the court and the people, he remained humble, avoiding becoming a target for envy. Thanks to his patience and sharp intellect, William Cecil not only preserved his position, but also laid the foundation for a period of stability and prosperity in England. Similarly, Niccolò Machiavelli, a renowned diplomat and political philosopher of the Italian Renaissance, served the Republic of Florence during a time of constant political upheaval among the Italian city-states, the papacy, and foreign powers. Though a visionary thinker, he was always careful in expressing his opinions. After the fall of the Florentine government, he was exiled and faced many hardships but continued to observe the political landscape, which led him to write The Prince, a masterpiece on the art of ruling and political strategy. Another case is Thomas More, an English scholar and statesman who served as Lord Chancellor under King Henry VIII. More was famous for his sharp intellect and integrity, but he also understood the dangers of directly opposing absolute power. When the court demanded he recognize the legality of Henry VIII's marriage to Anne Boleyn, he did not publicly oppose, but kept silent, avoiding unnecessary conflict. However, his silence could not protect him forever, and he was eventually sentenced to death. Nonetheless, More is remembered as one of England's greatest intellectuals. These figures all embody patience and profound wisdom. They understood that in politics, confrontation is not always the best course of action. Sometimes, knowing when to hold back, keep oneself composed, and wait for the right moment is the best way to achieve a larger goal and preserve the most important values. Throughout European history, true greats are not only remembered for their talent or power, but for their ability to exercise patience and tolerance in the face of circumstances. This patience is not passive endurance, but a reflection of wisdom, a deep understanding of human nature and the world, leading to strategic, long-lasting decisions. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor of Rome, left a legacy of thought on patience and tranquility in the face of adversity. In his meditations, he frequently emphasized that while we cannot control others' actions, we can control our own responses. Amidst the turmoil of war, political schemes, and betrayal within the imperial court, he did not let anger cloud his judgment, but used calmness and tolerance to maintain order in the empire. His patience was not weakness, but a display of inner strength, making him one of the greatest leaders in Roman history. Sir Thomas More, a political figure and great thinker of the Renaissance, also displayed a philosophical and ethical patience. When he refused to submit to the absolute power of King Henry VIII, he understood the price he would pay. But instead of reacting with anger or resistance, he chose to remain silent, letting his steadfastness speak for itself. In the final days before his execution, More kept a smile on his face, telling the executioner he bore no ill will, as he believed that no one could force another's conscience and that the truth would ultimately prevail. This kind of patience was not just about avoiding conflict. It was the patience of a soul that understood the fleeting nature of life and the immortality of moral values. Napoleon Bonaparte, known for his military genius, also displayed moments of strategic patience. After his defeat and exile to the calm island of Elba, he did not let anger or pride cloud his judgment. Instead of reacting impulsively, he patiently observed, waiting for the right moment, and returned to France during the 100 days before facing his final defeat at Waterloo. His patience showed that even the greatest conquerors cannot rely solely on strength, but must know when to step back, retreat, and then move forward more wisely. All of these individuals understand that the world does not operate according to one person's desires, and that anger or spontaneous rebellion often leads only to destruction. The patience they choose is a deliberate act, a reflection of far-reaching vision and wisdom that knows how to control the ego in pursuit of greater values. They do not endure because of fear, but because they understand that some things cannot be forced through violence or sheer willpower. They can only be achieved through patience, tolerance, and a deep understanding of human nature. In life, patience and tolerance are not only virtues that help us overcome challenges, but also a solid foundation for achieving lasting success. These elements are indispensable in building relationships, pursuing personal ideals, and facing the inevitable difficulties in life. One famous story about patience and political wisdom is that of Thomas More, a distinguished politician in Renaissance England. Despite coming from a humble background, he rose to prominence through his sharp intellect and diplomatic skills, eventually becoming an advisor to King Henry VIII. However, when he stood firm in his personal beliefs and opposed the king's marriage, he faced great danger. Thomas More did not succumb to pressure and ultimately sacrificed himself for his ideals. His patience and integrity not only helped him hold on to his beliefs during the most difficult circumstances, but also made him a symbol of virtue and intellect across generations. His story reminds us that steadfastness in the face of righteousness and honesty is always admirable, even at great personal cost. Another story of patience and strategic wisdom comes from the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. At a time when the Roman Empire was under constant attack from the Germanic tribes, he did not act impulsively or follow the advice of the military leaders around him. Instead, Marcus Aurelius chose the path of patience, strengthening defenses, fortifying borders, and only launching attacks when victory was assured. Thanks to this strategy, he managed to protect the empire's frontiers without depleting too many resources or lives. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that in life, sometimes the best solution is not to act immediately. Patience and long-term strategy are the keys to overcoming major challenges. Another inspiring story is that of Winston Churchill during World War II. When Britain faced intense attacks from Nazi Germany, many citizens and politicians wanted to pursue peace. However, Churchill, with his vision, stood firm against any compromises and refused to surrender. He delivered his famous speech, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields, and in the streets, we shall never surrender." Churchill's relentless determination and refusal to back down helped Britain withstand not only the enemy's attacks, but also played a crucial role in the eventual victory of the Allied forces. Churchill reminds us that sometimes perseverance in the hardest moments can be the deciding factor in maintaining faith and achieving victory. These stories are not just historical lessons, but deep insights for each of us in modern life. When facing difficulties, rather than rushing into action, we need to be patient and steadfast in our goals. No matter how tough the journey may be, we must learn to carefully consider our actions, choose strategic steps, and above all, maintain faith in our values. If you found these stories helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the European Knowledge Channel to continue exploring valuable lessons from history and great figures. Let's spread positive values and enrich our understanding of life together. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.